not to be there if he's the one that set the time and said, this is the day that I've hallowed set apart specifically to meet with us?
That's true.
And I think it's also intentional that he left it vague. As to, people say, well, what do you do on the Sabbath, especially when you're brand new to it? He says what not to do. He doesn't say what to do. So I think he wants to see where we're at with our heart with it. Like, I want to do this because you said so, and it's important. It's important to me.
Well, actually, that would be a good thing to talk about, especially in light of what we're going to talk about today. Because if somebody says, hey, I'm used to worshiping God by going to church, singing some songs, hearing a sermon, and then, spending the rest of the day going to work or playing or whatever I'm doing. And it's like, really, is that the description? Is that the volume that once you get inside, that's what we're supposed to be doing? And
is that the model?
Right. Is that the model? And that's something that's actually, some of these words we're going to talk about gets into that. So if somebody says, hey, I want to do this, what is this? What does that mean? What does it mean to do? Which again plays into a couple of the last words that we're going to get into. But the setup is going to take a couple chapters addressing 37, 38, 39, 40.
Sure. Listen, I'm here to learn, right?
Okay. But this is an incredible subject, actually. So if you guys go, we can get it.
Well, I started recording a few minutes ago because I wanted to capture the part about the Sabbath. And, I feel, even for myself, and I don't know if you guys remember when you first started keeping it, the first 3 were really hard. Like, something happened in my world to almost prevent me from keeping them. And then after, like, the 4th one, they got easier. Then it's just, the enemy definitely doesn't want us doing these. So,
well, then the big question is, what does it mean to keep the Sabbath? So on the one hand, back in the olden days, they had synagogues like neighborhood churches. I mean, you only had to walk, down the block. My mom had a church across the street, basically, when she was a kid, and it was really easy to walk there. The neighborhood went there. But when I started going to this Shabbat study, I had to drive 40 minutes. And I know some people that have to drive 2 hours. I mean, is that a Sabbath day's walk? Is that an easy thing to do? No, once you're there, it's like, okay, great. But it's heck trying to get there and then come home. And it was a 12 hour long meeting. And it's like, well, that's not very restful, but being there was wonderful. But, it's like, well, he did give the commandment at one point in the wilderness. I believe it was probably Book of Numbers. And he said, just stay in your tents. How big were their tents? Were they like a pup tent, or was, a backpacking thing? Or did they have one of these big, what you see the Bedouin, you can fit your whole household? And I don't know. I mean, how many people, you picture these camps of the Israelites, right? You get this aerial view. They show the Mishkan with the rectangle thing, and if Andrew Hoy's right, it was really round, and so that's not even appropriate. But then you have a few pup tents, scattered out on 4 sides. You could accommodate, maybe they draw a picture of 1,000 tents. It's like, we're talking 3 million people. Tents that look like, a military encampment from the 1800s or something. It's like, I don't think so. Whatever this thing was, think of the logistics. Where's the restroom? You're not going to, take a leak on your neighbor's tent. So you got to go, you'd have to walk so far that by the time you got back, you'd have to turn around and go out again. Forget having a dog or a cat,
The logistics of preparing food, of water delivery, of all this, it's just absolutely amazing for 3 million people.
Oh, yeah. It's just, and then, one of the instructions was carry a shovel, because you got to have a place to bury your
feces,
your feces. And it's like, darn well that you're going to do a good job, but your neighbor's not. You're going to end up stepping it, and then you're going to get mad at him. I'm just saying, everybody, it's always the other guys,
So I guess just for me now, if my son's not with me, I got a 7-year-old with Down syndrome, so he's kind of challenging on the Shabbat. But if he's not with me, I sleep. I I don't get out of bed. But that's just me, you know. And it's the day of rest, and I'm going to take it.
I would not say that's wrong. I mean, there's a value. I'm not trying to be wishy-washy or ambivalent, but there's a value in getting together, and there's a value in not getting together. So he didn't say thou shalt meet, but that I've heard other people say, oh no, it's a commanded gathering. It's a mikra kadesh, as he called it. You know, appointed time to gather on the Shabbat of Leviticus 23. That was the first one, and it's like, well, if you're under quarantine or for some reason you're exhausted. I mean, I worked so hard on Friday that on Saturday, because I'm regarding Saturday as Shabbat. I know other people have the lunar thing. I'm not squabbling with that. But man, I was so exhausted that I could barely move until noon. And it's like, okay, I'm not under any pressure to get up and meet somewhere. I used to be. You wake up in the morning and you have something to drink, a cup of tea or whatever, coffee, and then all of a sudden, oh, I gotta go. It's 10 o'clock already. I gotta run. I gotta drive. It's like, oh, that's not a Shabbat mind. But yet, when I was over at Mark's house, it was wonderful to get up and have people start showing up, and people bring a little bit of food, and you have the time to sit around and chit chat and talk, and you get into a study and some music, and that's a great thing. There's no other day to do it. You know, I wouldn't deny that.
Then, you know, that's kind of the reason why we're doing this, is so that, and I try to get these videos up by Thursday evening, so that people have something to watch on the Shabbat. Like when I first came out, I was consumed with learning, you know, so I would try to find new teachers that would share something, you know, and so eventually, you know, the longer you're in it, you kind of outgrow different teachers because they're teaching you at this beginning level.
Well,
you know, but
hopefully this will be the most substance that anybody can find anywhere. That's my thought about what's going into these eriktology things, because to me, it's the most substance. I mean, I've heard preachers for my whole life, and I can't recall anybody that talks about this kind of stuff. You know, what do these words say? What do they mean? And especially what we're going to talk about today in Ezekiel 43, I think is just like the pinnacle. And it's like, well, okay, put it out there for people to watch. You know, we're at the tipping point of it being either great evil, or all of a sudden Yahweh steps in and woohoo, you know, he pours out his comfort, his rachem on us. And today, literally, you know, here it is, the 17th of January, 2021. And we don't know what's going to happen. Could be this, could be that. It's like David walking out to face Goliath, and Goliath says, I'm going to eat you, pick my teeth with your femur. You know, and David says, your head's coming off in about 3 minutes from now. I'm going to, that loud mouth of yours is going to be picked out by the birds. And it's like, okay, well, which way is it going to go? That's right where we are literally as of today. So I would suggest just,
I like the words. I like the words that David said. Who the hell is this uncircumcised Philistine that dares to speak against the Elohim of Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob?
That's exactly where we are with these talks right now, especially this one in Ezekiel 43.
Yeah.
Okay, well, tell you what.
I'm looking forward to it.
All right, well, let's start with prayer, and then you launch right into it. Father, thank you for the opportunity to be able to just put together a teaching, and we will, you know, let it go forward. And Father, protect your remnant, those who want to follow you. In Yeshua's name I pray.
Amen.
Okay, so we're going to talk about Ezekiel 43. So in order to do that, we've got to wind all the way back to Ezekiel 36. If you go back before Ezekiel 36, and this will be pretty fast for the interest of getting into it. If you go back before Ezekiel 36, in the Ezekiel chapters 30, they're all talking about the reason why everybody's in big trouble. Here's a random verse, Ezekiel 34. So here Ezekiel's got a visit from some sort of manifest angelic messenger from Elohim. And in chapter 34, this is verse 2, thus says Yahweh Elohim, woe to the shepherds of Israel who have tended themselves. Is it not the flock that the shepherds should tend? Okay, right here, Yahweh is telling that his pastors, priests, prophets, professors, preachers have been doing something wrong. It's like, that's those guys a couple thousand years ago. It has nothing to do with us. And it's like, well, we better see to it whether it's us that falls into this category. The choicest you eat, the wool you wear, the healthiest you slaughter, but the rest of the flock you don't even tend. So here the preachers are told how to fleece the flock. And I was talking to a guy who was going to, whether it was seminary or Bible college, but one of the classes, the teacher, the professor was saying, I'm going to teach you now how to fleece the flock. That's your right. That's your prerogative as the pastor. The frail you did not strengthen, the ill you did not cure, the broken you did not bind, the banished you did not retrieve, for the lost you did not search. Rather, you subjugated them with force and with rigor. Now, this is Yahweh telling his complaint about his, and then put it into the category of priest, pastor, professor. The people that should know Yahweh's words have been exploiting the peasants, the laity, those who don't know anything about what Yahweh's words really are. And Yahweh's saying that his heart is about tending one another with care. Verse 5, Ezekiel 34, thus they became scattered for a lack of a shepherd and became food for every beast of the field. They became scattered. My sheep wander on all the mountains, upon every high hill. My sheep have scattered upon the face of the whole earth, but no one seeks and no one searches. Therefore, when Yeshua came and said, I only come for the lost sheep of the house of Israel, he was very specifically coming as the counter, the complete opposite of the typical ecclesiastical hierarchy, you might say, the church system. Verse 7, therefore, O shepherds, hear the word of Yahweh, as I live. Now, when Yahweh says that, it's like he's holding up his hand. There's a word that's spelled Kaf Yod, like K-Y. Kaf is a prefix letter, means like or as or similar to, and Yod as a suffix means myself. So when he holds up his hand and swears, Yahweh is saying, there's another phrase elsewhere that he says, as I swear by myself, because he can't swear by anybody or anything any greater or bigger or more positive, more absolute. So his hand, so I see the word Kaf Yod is Yahweh holding up his hand and swearing on his identity, like his signature of his fingerprint, his iris scan, his DNA. He's saying, I swear by my word that when he says something, and that's that word Nam Yahweh, Nun Aleph Mem, he's saying, I said it and thus it is. We're going to get into that word a little bit later, Dabarti, Ani Dabarti. But what I'm saying is that every time you see him saying, especially as I live, that because my sheep have become spoils and my sheep have become food for every beast of the field for lack of a shepherd, and my shepherds did not seek out my sheep, for the shepherds tended themselves, but did not tend my flock. Therefore, shepherds, hear the word of Yahweh. Now, this is Yahweh speaking against the shepherds. I'm going to jump ahead. Shepherds will no longer tend themselves, thus I will rescue my sheep from their mouths, and they would no longer be food for them. Yahweh's going to rescue his illiterate laity from the shepherds, the priests, the preachers. Well, I believe that's what this eriktology study is. We're making accessible into the eyes and the ears of the illiterate laity. These are the words of Yahuwah our Elohim. That's why we're doing this. giving the banquet, the feast of Yahuwah's own presence in these words, in these letters, to anybody that wants it for no expense, no charge. Verse 11, for thus says Yahweh Elohim, behold, I am here, and I will seek out my sheep, and I will tend them. As a shepherd tends his flock on the day he is among his separated sheep, so I will tend to my sheep and rescue them from the places where they were scattered on the day of cloud and thick cloud. I will remove them from the people, gather them from the lands, and bring them to their soil. And I will tend them upon the mountains of Israel, in the streams, and in all the land's habitations. Well, here's Ezekiel 34, Yahweh saying that he's going to take his scattered sheep, scattered all across the face of the earth, and bring them back. That is the setup for everything else we're going to talk about today, and what is also the setup for everything we have been talking about. So I'm going to go pretty fast, but I'm just saying this is not just the restoration of Ephraim, but it's the whole house of Israel. I mean, Ephraim was the lead tribe of the 10 lost tribes, but Yehuda's been scattered. People have lost their identity, and this is Yahweh's heart to restore the people as a confederated nation. They will, verse 14, I will shepherd them upon good pasture, and their fold will be upon the heights of Israel's mountains. There they will lie down in a good fold and graze upon fat pastures on the mountains of Israel. I will care for my sheep. I will lay them down. Nam Yahweh. For the lost I will search, the banished I will retrieve, the broken I will bind, the ill I will strengthen. But the fat one and the strong one I will destroy. I will tend them with justice. The word justice is typically mishpat. Here, Yahweh is saying that when the day comes, or when the time comes that he's going to reverse his attention from being Israel's adversary, Israel's Satan, Israel's harm, he's going to be Israel's benefactor. Abundantly, which means we're not at the end of the world, because the world can't end until this happens, and it hasn't happened yet. This is Ezekiel 34, and it has not happened for the last 2000 plus. I mean, if the curse was not up until 2010, then that was a phase of human history. We're now in a different phase, earth epochs or eras. And so what I'm saying by saying, oh, this isn't the end of the world, what I'm saying is, I've heard my whole life, oh, the rapture is imminent. And it's like, well, I would disagree. What's imminent is Yahweh turning his favor on his people, rescuing his sheep out of the mouths of the people that he had custodian over them. And Yahweh set it up. He sustained it for quite some time. But here we are. So what we have in front of us is not just, oh, just let me be raptured and leave all this stuff behind. It's like, wait a minute. It looks to me like there's going to be quite some time in front of us, but the time in front of us is Yahweh promises, holding up his hand and swearing by nobody else. He's promising that he will tend us with food and drink and comfort and security with him as our shepherd. And this isn't a picture of gentle Jesus, meek and mild. This is Yahuwah, our Elohim. Now, he may use Yeshua, but that's not what he says. This is Yahweh our Elohim, and that's the voice, that's the name, that's the meaning behind the name. Again, as we talked the other day, the word Yahuwah means he will cause it to exist. He will make it happen. That's what the name Yahuwah means. And he can use Moshe, Joseph, Daniel, Abraham, David. Yeshua, he can use Mark and Kurt, but he can use anybody. But he's the guy that gets the credit.
He's in scripture, he's even used an ass.
That's right. He'll use whoever and whatever. Verse 20, Ezekiel 34. Therefore, thus says Yahweh, behold, I am here, and I shall judge between the robust lamb and the famished lamb. So here we have people that he has allowed to be over us, banksters, government officials, church system, whatever it might have been. And verse 22, so I will save my sheep, and they will no longer be for spoils, and I will judge between lamb and lamb. I will establish over them a single shepherd. He will tend them. Verse 24, and I, Yahuwah, will be Elohim to them, and my servant David a prince among them. I, Yahuwah, have spoken. I will seal a covenant of peace with them and abolish evil beasts from the land, and they will dwell securely in the wilderness and sleep in the forests. Hasn't happened yet. You go try to sleep in the forest in America, and you'll get arrested. You're not allowed to sleep in your car. You can't pull over on the side of the road and take a nap if you're driving. It's illegal. You can't fall asleep on the park bench. That's illegal. So, well, nowadays up in Portland anywhere, they're allowing the homeless to camp on the streets, but that used to be illegal too. Then, verse 26, then I will make them and the surroundings of my hill into a blessing, and I will bring the rain in its time, and it'd be rains of blessing. The tree of the field will yield its fruit, the earth will yield its produce, and they will be secure upon their land. Hey, wait a minute. I thought there was like this global change and everything was supposed to get horrible. You read Matthew 24, and you read in Thessalonians, and you read in Revelation, oh, it'll be a time worse than any time. The water's going to be poisoned, the air's poisoned, the food is poisoned, and nobody can eat, and everybody's dying, and everybody's getting vaccinated. Oh, it's the beast and the Antichrist. And it's like, that's the opposite of this. Yahweh says that there will be fruit trees yielding fruit, the land yield its produce, there's going to be rain, there's going to be blessing. Then he says, then they will know, this is verse 27, Ezekiel 34, then they will know that I am Yahweh. When he says, then you'll know that I am Yahweh. Ki ani Yahweh, Kaf Yod, Aleph Nun Yod, that word ani, Aleph Nun Yod, literally it means like the emperor or the admiral surrounded by his fleet. So that picture we have is the eriktology logo, the Nun Samach with all the letters around it and just this orange burst. That's basically a picture. It says up in the right-hand corner, Ani Yahweh. Surrounded by all these 22 letters, and then the Nun Samach, and Yeshua said, if I be lifted up, just like this, Moshe lifting up the serpent in the wilderness on the English version, on the standard, the stick, the Nun on the Samach, if I be lifted up, I'll draw all men unto me. So the Yeshua as Mashiach is a primary, preeminent, very significant aspect, but this is where I make the distinction between Yahuwah and Yeshua. Yeshua, I believe, is Mashiach, but there's something that's equal and there's something that's not equal. We talked about that before. We'll carry on, but I just trying to make the point here that
interject something here on verse 23. Also, there's a particular group of people who expect David to return because it's saying my servant, one shepherd, my servant David. So I don't know if you care to address that, or have you spoken?
The word
they're
David,
literally expecting David. So
the word David is Dalet Vav Dalet, which is beloved. And so here's a play on words. When Yeshua was being baptized by Yochanan the Immerser, John the Baptist, in the River Jordan, the heavens opened, as it were, a dimension portal was opened. A voice said, "This is in English, this is my beloved son.
This is my
in
David.
whom I am well pleased." And the dove, the Ruach appeared as a dove, landed on his head. But the word my beloved son, well, son, S-O-N, would be Ben, Bet Nun, B-N. And the word beloved is Dalet Vav Dalet, otherwise translated as David. And if it was my beloved, it would be Dodi. So he said, here is Hine Ben Dodi, my beloved son, Ben Dodi. Well, that's also translated son of David. So the voice from heaven, when Yeshua was being baptized, was actually validating this is son of David. But that's just a translation. The other translation, this is my beloved son. It's the same exact words. So was Yahweh saying this is the son of David you guys were expecting? Possibly, but he said the words, this is my beloved son, the exact same words. So instead of saying, well, which of the two did he mean? I believe he meant both. Okay, just pick it up and take it from there.
So what he's speaking about is the actual spirit that David had. And David was called a man after Yahweh's own heart because he loved the Torah, the same way the Messiah loved the Torah.
There's a little bit more besides that. The spirit, the ruach, the mind, the attitude, the disposition, certainly. But the word ben, as we discussed before, the word bet yod nun, bina means understanding. Bet nun hey means construction or to build. Bet is house, Nun is like the life that jumps out, or the activity within the house. So you could say this is the construct of my beloved regard for you guys, my people. It's like this is the manifest, the construct. This is the materialization of how I really care for humanity, the sons of Adam. And it's like, so to try to answer the question, is this the Father in human form? Or is this the Father creating this Word, and it's the Word in human form, certainly, according to John chapter 1, but is he equivalent with the Father? But then it starts off saying, in the beginning was the Word, and the Word was with Elohim, but yet the Word was Elohim. And so he sets up this dichotomy. We addressed that before, not to take the time now, but what I'm saying is he gives us these two things like an oxymoron. One says that the other is impossible, but yet they're both have to be. It's kind of like this catch-22. You have to have this before you can have that. You have to have that before you can have this. So either you have both or neither, and they're both contradictory. So which is it?
So then Ezekiel 34:24 says, I'm reading from the NIV version. It says, the Lord will be their God, and my servant, it says David, but it could be reading, my servant, my beloved, will be prince among them. And if that's my beloved, Yeshua or Yahushua, then Yahweh have spoken.
Yeah, but you might be his beloved, Kurt. Maybe it's you he's going to raise up.
Right.
I mean, who is his beloved?
People are going to be severely disappointed if it's me.
Well, here let's carry on. Verse 27 of Ezekiel 34, that we already read that. They will know that I am Yahuwah when I break the rods of their yoke, rescue them from the hand of those who slave them. I don't know about you, but I'm still anticipating that event. In other words, it hasn't happened. So I still have the county, the state, the federal government, the bank, all these other stupid yoke and burden and rod trying to enslave my behavior, my mind as well as my actions. Yahweh claims to relieve me from that, and I haven't seen it happen, nor have I seen it happen in any generations previous to me. Verse 28, they will no longer be spoils for the nations, and the beasts of the land will no longer devour them. They will dwell securely, and none will make them afraid. You can't say that's being satisfied in Israel, because Iran, Syria, Hezbollah, they're all throwing, Hamas, they're all throwing anything they can find, whether it's missiles, rocks, knives, infantata, I mean, all this stuff they're doing. So those people in the land of Israel are not these sheep, and this is not the time, because it wouldn't be happening. So it hasn't happened yet.
They're living in fear in Israel. Every day they get up, and apparently even children are scared to go to school because of bombs going off all the time. And this says, I will take fear away.
That's right. He says, I will establish for them a planting of renown. Well, a planting of renown, that's going on for quite some time. That's renown. That's like years, generations. Oh, remember when? That's renown. So when I keep saying, look, we could have 1,000 years in front of us, maybe just even 100 years, but 100 years, well, there's still, oh yes, the time of renown 100 years ago, 200 years ago. But it's like there's all this talk, especially in Ezekiel, of we've got a lot of time in front of us. This is just a page of history that's happening right now. For people to run around like Chicken Littles, the sky is falling, this is the end of the world. It's like, whoa, calm down. Yahweh is our Elohim. Yahuwah Elohim. Now, from there, he held up his hand and swore, and I'm going to count on that. I'm not going to take the words of those who have no regard of him, who swear what they're going to do. That's the voice of Goliath, like what Mark was saying earlier. I'm not going to listen to Goliath's voice, the voice of the Illuminati, the banksters, the government, the Pope. They've been caught lying or hoping that they can do this or that, and it's in Yahweh's hands. And when you see what's in Ezekiel 43, that's where we're headed. It all comes into view. They, speaking of Yahweh's sheep, will no longer be decimated by famine in the land. They will no longer bear the shame of the nations. Then they will know that I, Yahweh their Elohim, am with them, and that they are my people, the house of Israel. Nam Yahweh, Nam Adonai Yahweh is what it says here. Some people hate the word Adonai. Well, here Yahweh uses it out of his own mouth. Verse 30 of Ezekiel 34, Nam Adonai Yahweh. So he uses that word Aleph Dalet Nun Yod. The word Aleph is a prefix, I will or I am. Dalet Nun is the word that's translated judge or to make the determination or make the call, the referee, the umpire. Yod is the personal suffix meaning myself. Verse 31, you are my sheep, the sheep of my pasture. You are man, human. I am your Elohim. Nam Adonai Yahweh, once again. My point is, we have to take his reality as the reality. You watch the news, you read the internet, your heart will be shattered. You will have fearful expectation. Don't even go there. Those words behind you, Kurt, those are the words of truth. Now the question is, what do they mean? It's like finding this artifact. I drew that, I call it the Rosetta Stone of the Paleo-Hebrew. You got the Sophite letters on top. You've got then the next line from the top down is the modern letters. Then you've got the Paleo letters. And at the bottom, you've got the Mishkan pattern. It's all right there, perfectly said in minimal form. Let's move on. He's talking about the prophecy against Edom, verse 5. And this is the sons of Esau, which could, I'm not going to say who's Israel because it's not necessarily about the DNA. It could be, but it's also about who wants to be Israel. And to call the Palestinians Esau or the Romans Esau, everybody says this and that. I don't know. I'm not putting labels on anybody, but there's an attitude. Verse 5 of Ezekiel 35, because you have eternal hatred and you cause the blood of the children of Israel, in this Stone Snot translation, to stream forth by the sword at the moment of their disaster, at the time of the climactic sin. Therefore, as I live, Nam Adonai Yahweh, I swear that I will turn you into blood, and blood will pursue you. Surely, though you have hated bloodshed, bloodshed will pursue you. I will make Mount Seir, I believe that's in Jordan, Petra, desolate and a waste, and I will cut off from it those who come and go. So here, what I'm saying is, this is mishvat, balancing of scales, and Yahweh says all over the scripture. He brings upon people what they have brought upon themselves by doing it to others. And he says, if you guys pursue, speaking to his people that will listen to him, if you pursue righteousness, righteousness will chase you down. If you pursue bloodshed and evil and harm and hatred, then that's what's going to chase you down. That's the balancing of scales. That's mishpat. So I'm not suggesting, though it's a good idea as a prepper to have guns and ammo and weapons, knives and spears and food and provisions and all this. It's like, whoa, wait a minute. Better that you know what these words mean. Better you know what these words mean, because Yahweh promised that the land would feed us. And remember, at one point, he fed Elijah with the crows. The ravens went out and picked up scraps of food and brought it back. Imagine the big shots having a picnic and all that. They turn their back and the crows come in and grab all the food. Hey, get back here. Throwing rocks at them. And where are the crows flying? They're flying to Elijah and feeding him. Yahweh said that he will feed us. That's not our main concern. I'm not saying it's a bad idea, but that shouldn't be the focus of our salvation. Yahuwah is the resource of all our salvation, our saving, our deliverance. Know what these letters mean. You can't fail if you do that. Anyway, going on. I will act, verse 11, Ezekiel 35. I will act according to your anger and according to your vengefulness for what you have done because of your hatred of them. Then I will become known among them when I judge you. Bring mishpat. In other words, Yahweh is saying about the house of Esau, again, whether it's the Palestinians or Rome or whoever, the way that you have treated, it's like, wait a minute, why didn't Yahweh stop them from cutting up his people? Because his people deserve judgment also. And it's like Yahweh always says, I'm going to bring in your adversaries to tear you guys apart, and then I will bring the adversaries' ways upon themselves. It's like, oh gosh, how do we get out of this vicious circle? Remember that. How do we get out of this vicious circle? We're going to get to that in Ezekiel 43. Okay, quickly going on, Ezekiel 36. he says, verse 6, therefore prophesy concerning the land of Israel and say to the mountains and to the hills, to the streams and the valleys. Let me back up one verse, the last phrase. Therefore, thus says Yahweh Elohim, I swear that I have spoken in the fire of my vengefulness, that's the fury of his wrath, against the remaining nations and against all of Edom, who have arrogated, that's being arrogant, my land to themselves as a heritage with all the joy of their heart. Okay, those people who think that Israel belongs to them, the land of Israel, from what I understand right now, 2021, the people that actually own the land of Israel are the Rothschilds, the Masonic Order, the Knights Templar, the Vatican. These guys running the world, the Illuminati, that they own everything. It's like, is that true? It just hears stories. What do I know? Maybe it's Hollywood. But they claim to say this is our land with the joy of their heart. But Yahweh claims that it's his. And it says, with contempt of soul because of Israel's expulsion in scorn. Well, that word scorn is where we get the word bozo, bet vav Zion. So what I'm saying is Israel acted like a bozo. Remember I mentioned before, Bozo the clown of the 1950s and 60s. And in the 1980s, there was a little sticker people had with a bozo's face with a circle and a hash line through it. No bozos. It's like, quit being a stupid idiot. Quit being stupid. Well, Israel continues, and even we today, quite often. And the whole reason for this study is to get ourselves out of that bozopherousness, you might say. Okay, anyway. Thus said... In verse 6, thus says Yahweh Elohim, you bore the shame of the nation, speaking of Israel. Therefore, thus says Adonai Yahweh, I have lifted my hand, there again, Kafyod, swearing that the nations surrounding you will bear their shame. He's going to turn the tables, tip the teeter-totter, he's going to go the other direction. But you, O mountains of Israel, will give forth your branch and bear your fruit for my people Israel, for they are soon to come. Soon to come, it's been 2,500 years. Ezekiel was the ear of Daniel. It's been 2,500 years. And Yahweh said they're soon to come. Hasn't happened yet. But Yahweh's going to tip the scales, turn the table. For behold, I am with you. He says it doesn't matter what the status quo looks like. Yahweh's going to turn things. And we're going to get into Ezekiel 43. What is the nature of the turning? Where do we play? That's what we're going to get into here. I am with you. I will turn to you, or turn my attention to you. Every time he says this word turn, I'm bringing this about so you'll realize this is the subject. And you will be tilled and you will be sown. Planting, farming. People are going to work season after season after season, generation after generation. There's a future for Israel. I will make people numerous upon you, the entire house of Israel, all of it. Hasn't happened yet. We still talk about the lost tribes of Israel. And when he says the whole entire house of Israel, all of it, he's saying and then re-saying, it hasn't happened yet, and it's going to happen. The world cannot end until this happens with duration, with quite some time. The cities will be inhabited and the ruins will be rebuilt. I will multiply man and animal upon you, and they will multiply and be fruitful. I will make you inhabited as in your earlier times, and I will make it better than it was at your beginning. Now that means, when was the beginning of Israel? With Abraham, it wasn't a nation. What about with Moshe, with the Exodus? Well, they were conquering the land under Joshua, but that wasn't the beginning. David, the era of David and Solomon, known as the Golden Age. He made Solomon the wealthiest and wisest man ever to walk the earth. David confederated or unified all 12 tribes, but he was still conquering his enemies and putting them down. Assyria was held at bay. David's kingdom extended up into the Euphrates River. Solomon basically held it, but then Solomon lost it when he brought in the idols and the other Elohim. But that was the beginning. So it says here, I will make it better than it was at the beginning. It hasn't happened yet. Then you'll know that I am Yahweh. So whatever we think of the history of the people, whoever we think Yahuwah is, oh yes, he was the guy, he was the deity, the God that brought Moses and 3 million Israelites out of Egypt. You know, I saw a thing, I think it was the History Channel years ago, or National Geographic or somebody. They tried to show a depiction of the great Exodus of Moshe and all the house of Israel out of Egypt. they showed one man with half a dozen followers walking through some, looked like a grove of trees. It's like, what? One man with half a dozen of his friends? Oh, yes. And they were suggesting, oh, the rest is all myth. It was probably just Moses and a couple other guys. What? the pastors, the preachers, the professors, the people running with $1 million budget to put together a Hollywood movie event on the History Channel are trying to tell the idiot bozo laity who can't pick up the Bible and read it that instead of 3 million people coming out, 600,000 men plus their wives and children and the rest of the strangers and proselytes that were with them, they represented by one man walking with half a dozen friends and said, well, everything else is all just legend. Bunch of damn liars. You gonna listen to those guys? Okay. Pick your reality. I will make it better than was at your beginning. Then you'll know that I am Yahweh. What do you mean, then we'll know that I am Yahweh? What he's saying here is he says, the word Shem is name, but Shin Mem is the way it's spelled, 2 letters, but it also means fame, renown, and reputation. When he says, then you'll know that I am Yahweh, he's basically saying, when I claim to be the guy that makes it happen, when I make it happen, you'll realize what I meant when I said it was going to happen, and now it's happening. Huh? That's what the word Yahuwah means. And so when Moshe was talking to him at the burning bush, and Yahweh says, no, go back and get your people. I'm going to get everybody out from being slaves. They've been there for hundreds of years, and I'll bring them out, and they're going to worship me on this mountain. And Moshe said, can you give me some sort of token, a sign? Can you make as it were, a feather fall out of the sky, and I'll stick it in my hat to remind me? And Yahweh says, are you a bozo? He said, listen, I told you it was going to happen. The sign that I'm telling you the truth is you guys are all going to come back and worship me on the mountain. That's the sign. Oh, you don't need a feather in your hat. You don't need pick up a special pebble sitting on the ground and hold on to that and remember. He says, I've given you my words. My words are, I'm the guy that says it and it happens. End of story. Okay, that's what it means that I'm Yahweh. I will cause man to walk upon you, my people Israel, and they will inherit you. He's speaking to the land. Then you will be theirs for a possession, and you will no longer be bereaved of them. He's speaking to the land as if it had some sort of consciousness. He's saying, he's promising the land. He's also promising us. It'll be for duration. The word duration comes from the Hebrew word dor, dalet resh or dalet vav resh, lador dor or dor lador, which means generation after generation. It's enduring. It's lasting for quite a while. This is not the end of the world because this hasn't happened. He can't rapture us out of here because this has to happen. He said it. His word has to come to reality. Going down, verse 13, Ezekiel 36, thus says Adonai Yahweh, because people say of you, they say of Jerusalem, you go to Jerusalem, it says, this is the city that devours its inhabitants. That's its motto, its claim to fame. Jerusalem is the city who devours whoever comes to live in it. It says here, people say of you, you devour man, and you have become one who drives out your nations. You drive out everybody who comes to live in you. Therefore, you will no longer devour people. You will never again drive out your nations. Nam Adonai Yahweh. I will no longer allow the derision of nations to be heard about you, and you will no longer bear the shame of the peoples. You'll never again cause your nations to falter. Nam Adonai Yahweh. Okay, then let's go down. Verse 18. So I poured out my wrath upon them, meaning his own people. Yahweh's telling, this is why Israel got driven out. This is why Ephraim got lost among the nations. This is why for 2,730 years they were kicked out of the land. He's given the bottom line right here. So if you want the antidote and the remedy, that which turns things around, it's to do the opposite of this. That's the benefit of reading scripture. This is what it says in English. So I poured out my wrath upon them because of the blood that they had shed in the land and because they had defiled it with their idols. There you go. Idols and killing each other. I scattered them like abortions is blood in the land. I scattered them amongst the nations where they were dispersed among the lands, according to their way and according to their acts that I judged them. In other words, we brought it on ourselves. He brought mishpat, a balancing of scales, exactly what we've done. He brought upon us. They came amongst the nations where they came, and they desecrated my Shem Kadosh, my holy name, when it was said of them, oh, these are the people of Yahweh, but they were kicked out of his land. So Yahweh kicked out his people, scattered them across the face of the earth, but they kept the reputation. And people said, oh, look, it's one of those guys. It's a Jew, or it's a whatever. It's a guy from Naphtali or Zebulun or Gad. It's like, but they bore the identity of Israel. And they said, oh, that's one of those guys that worship Yahweh. Let's see what happens to him. Let's see if his Elohim is anybody special, or is he just like any one of these other statues we have. Verse 21, I took pity on my holy name, which the house of Israel had desecrated among the nations where they came. There's the problem. So here we're going to get to the pinnacle, the fulcrum, the tipping point in just a couple of verses from now. Israel got kicked out of the land because of doing idolatry. They got scattered to the face of the earth amongst all the other nations, and they kept doing the same thing, desecrating the Shem, the reputation of their Elohim, Yahuwah. In other words, they told the wrong story. They kept the wrong holidays. They told the wrong identity. Therefore say to the house of Israel, thus says Adonai Yahweh, it is not for your sake that I ask, O house of Israel, but for my Shem Kadosh, my holy name, that you have desecrated among the nations where you came. Then verse 23, this is it. I will sanctify my great name that is desecrated among the nations, that you have desecrated among them. Then the nations will know that I am Yahweh, Nam Adonai Yahweh, when I become sanctified through you before their eyes. Huh? How's he going to do that? Here, in Hebrew, verse 23, Ve'kadoshti et Shemi Hagadol. I will make Kadosh my Shem Hagadol. The word Gadol is wonderful, majestic, with banners, with ribbons, like braided hair. It's to be exalted beyond, with the highest ornamentation of majesty. And the word Kadosh, remember, that's the word holy, translated into English, but the word out of the angels' mouths that were going around his throne were saying Kadosh, Kadosh, Kadosh. They were not saying holy, holy, holy. He said, the purity of the actual manifest of his essence, which is Kadosh, in its Gadol state, in its most ornamented, majestic, brilliant, radiant display, the people of Israel has made, here it is, Mem Het Lamed Lamed, Ha Machalal. Het Lamed Lamed. That's our letters in English, HLL. We have made his name Hell. In the understanding, the eyes of the nations, and remember the word nation, goy, comes from the root word Haggah, which means to navigate, to steer, to think, to ponder, to meditate, to spell words phonetically. Pulls it all back into the language. Rudder, steering wheel, helm. To steer, to navigate the phonetics of a language. So we, instead of taking the language like you have right behind you, Kurt, on their display, instead of knowing the Hebrew, knowing how to read it and bring Gadol to the Shem, bring majesty to the Shem in its kadoshest format, which is to say, as emanating right from Yahweh himself, without translation, without reiterating it, distorting it into something that we think we can comprehend, to be able to read this language at its own face value, for Yahweh to say that he invented this word that was with him and that is him, essentially, if we can read this language at its own value, which is key to the Moedim, that's the whole purpose of this study, that's the opposite of his name being halal. The word halal means vile, profane, desecrated, common, vulgar, which is to say guttural, of the street. It's also to be punched holes in and drained out. Well, Yeshua was made vulgar, profane, common, hung between thieves, punched holes in, and drained out of all his blood. It's to be made hollow. So it's the word for flute, like the instrument that you play that's a hollow, like a recorder that you blow air through because it's hollow. And so it also means outer space. This is the word Het Lamed Lamed. So he says, you have made my reputation hell. You've punched holes into it and emptied it out, drained it of its essence, of its juice, Well, that's a picture of punching holes in Yeshua, lifting him up and draining him out of all his blood. Yeshua is this word in human form. So the Jews and the Romans got together 2,000 years ago, lifted up the human manifestation of this word, punched holes in him, drained him out, and wounded him unto death. To be wounded unto death and to start something new, like, a new religion, is exactly what this word Het Lamed Lamed means. So here, for the last 2,000 years, the Christian church, based on that event of this guy that was pierced, wounded to death, drained out of blood, and started something new. It also, Het Lamed Lamed, means a priest of questionable genealogical descent. Hey, just like Yeshua, born of the Virgin Mary, but people said he was a bastard son and that Joseph had some sort of illegitimate or somebody else with Miriam, his mother. It's like, that's exactly the meaning of the word. Oh, and it's also a priest who's denied the priesthood. Hey, just like Yeshua, it's like he's our high priest. He's our representative, our liaison ambassador between humanity and Elohim. Let's kill him. It's exactly this word. Every possible definition fits exactly this being Yeshua. So we were talking about last week about Isaiah 53. Here's another word. Just in knowing the translational meaning of one word, you can see that what those guys did, the Jews and the Romans tandem, house of Esau and the house of Jacob, you might say, together fulfilled this prophecy. But Yeshua said, don't blame them. I'm doing this of my own hand. So I'm not blaming the Jews and the Romans. I'm saying that's the house of Esau and the house of Yaakov, and they both were putting their hand to fulfilling what Yahuwah said, I'm going to make this happen by my own hand. Anyway, I'm just trying to prove the point, the significance of this verse. You have desecrated among the Goyim, Halal Tam, Het Lamed Lamed Tav Mem, Betok, in the midst, and Yada HaGoyim, that would be to say they will know Ki Ani Yahweh, Nam Adonai Yahweh. Oh boy, that's twice he's laying out his, he's saying, listen, I'm going to put my seal of my imperial voice twice here. Ki Ani Yahweh, Nam Adonai Yahweh. Now here's the critical word. Bet He Kuf Dalet Shin Yod. Ba ha kadoshi bakam la ainiham. Okay, when I am made kadosh in you, in their eyes. Okay, now you could say what this means is we don't know what's going to happen or when it's going to happen. And one of these days, suddenly Yahweh is going to step onto the scene and make it happen, and he's going to do it through his people Israel. Oh, hey, how wonderful. We're just sitting there la-di-da, eating breakfast or mowing the lawn, and poof, we get raptured. Oh, hey, what do you know? There's the great story. He's making his Shem Kadosh. Or what this means is, he says, listen, I've told you what to do. I've told you how to understand who I am and what I'm about. It's right there in those letters. It's right there in reading those 22 letters. In Hebrew, Ivrit, keyed to the Moedim, the Mishkan pattern. And when you guys understand that my identity and my plans for what I'm going to do and how I'm going to do it is all wrapped up in my very own personal spoken word, and so you exalt my words in the understanding, in the eyes. That word "eye," spelled Ayin Yod Nun, means to observe, to see something sparkle or shiny and say, oh, so it catches your attention. It also is like a deep well that springs up, and so you see the water bubbling out of the earth. But it also means to weigh carefully, balance exactly, to measure quite deliberately. He's telling us to wrap our intellect, like we were talking about last week, the word shakil in the word hetchin bet. He has put everything into this very, very particular design, what we might call clever and shrewd, but it's an ingenious work. That mentioned before, Yeshua in the book of Revelation is seen with a golden band around, it's called a girdle or a band, it's around his chest, and it's like, why is he wearing that? Well, he thinks that it looks pretty cool. He's all dressed up for picture day. John the Baptist gets this vision. It's like, okay, whatever. It's like, no, wait a minute. That word, golden band, is hetchin bet, and it means an ingenious device. It's this Aleph-Bet. It's everything this thing represents. That's the ingenious device. It's a synonym. It's the exact same word as a golden band. This incredible, ingenious plan, this device. It's when you see the Hebrew words, you realize that Yahweh's all about wordplay, puns, 2, 3, 4 levels deep, probably more than that. I can't see beyond that, but people who know chess moves, like Mark there, boy, you should be able to see all kinds of stuff in this language. But you have to know how to read the letters. The fact that they're correlated to the Mishkan and the Moedim and the 7 days of creation, that's just this code that sets up what Yahweh is really going to do, what his identity is, and how to read all these words. Anyway, let me go on. Then, so in other words, this word bakam, bet, kaf, mem. Kaf, mem is the suffix that means you all, meaning Israel. When it says bet, that means within or in the condition of. So in other words, I can read this, that when Yahweh says, listen, are we standing at the bus stop waiting for a bus that's late and showing up? Or Yahweh's basically, I'm waiting on you guys. When you guys make my identity, my reputation, my covenant with my people true and accurate according to my kadoshness, my Shem Hagadol Hakadosh. When you start telling the world about the truth of who I am and what I'm about, then it's almost like you are making the shoes and setting them on the step, and I will come and step into them when the shoes fit. So I did that talk back in 2011, Cinderella's Slipper. What is Cinderella's slipper? Well, only Yahweh's foot will fit. Only the Mashiach, Yeshua's foot will fit. That's what that talk was about in December of 2011. Here's the thing. This discussion that we are having these videos about, this eriktology study, is doing this very business. And so one of the things we said way back in 2011, how many, it's a rhetorical question, how many of who has to do what, when, for how long, with what heart? How many? Us, now, with all of our heart, keeping the words of this Torah and expecting Yahweh to step in and do what he says? Yeah, that's the answer. And then Yahweh will step in and do what he says. He's been waiting for us to do this generation after generation after generation after generation. Oh, but it's not their fault because they were under the 2,730-year curse. So nobody, even if they tried to do stuff, it was ineffective until the duration of the generational turning until at least 2010. And here we are. And the fact that we have decided, let's go. It's like the racehorse, the gate opened and wham, here you go. It's like, okay, we're not sitting around business as usual, just another generation of raising children and learning the church doctrine. This isn't about that. This is returning to Yahweh's words. This is. And so for the last 10 years, asking the question, hey, we're doing what he said. How many of who has to do what, when, for how long, with what heart? And guess what? As of today, tomorrow, this is January 17th of 2021, as of today, tomorrow, the next day, there's people on the internet talking about the entire world changing. Something is about to change. The dawning of the age of Aquarius, oh, it's in the stars. It has nothing to do with the stars. That it has to do with Yahweh saying, I told you that when you guys would do my stuff, sit down on Shabbat. What? Sit down together or by yourself? Take a nap or study the scripture? Either one, do it with a heart to Yahweh. Why the Shabbat? Because the word spelled Shin Bet Tav means when you return. Return to what? Return to the Shabbat, return to what I said, honoring the seventh day instead of the first day, but the word Shabbat also means to sit down. The fact that we're told to sit down on the seventh day in the Catholic Church very intentionally changed it to the first day instead of the seventh day is proof, and Yahweh allowed it to happen to sustain the curse for 2,000 years. Yahweh allowed, or maybe he even put the Catholic Church up to it, to change the special Kadosh day, the holy day, from the seventh day to the first day. And in so doing, all the people that had a good heart, meaning to follow and walk in Yahweh's ways, could not, because it was the wrong day. Now, this is just my thinking about it, and it's like, wow, Yahweh's plan. He had the Catholic Church, he empowered them to take over the world, and then he had them change the day and get rid of all the Moedim. And he says, these are my Shabbats. The Moedim are called Shabbat, Shabbaton. I mean, super Shabbat. And he says, okay, Deuteronomy 30, when you return. Oh, that's the word Shabbat, when you return. So the word Shin Bet, Shuv, means an old man or one who returns, one who comes back another trip around the sun. How many days, how many years around the sun, around and around and around. It all goes into these cycles of turning, which is we're going to get the word Saviv in Ezekiel 43. What I'm saying is here we are at 2021. The world's about to shift. The teeter-totter, this side or that side. It's right now hanging in this balance. You know, the U.S. presidential election, we don't know which way it's going to go. Either a great evil is going to come in or maybe Yahweh's favor. We don't know. We're standing here saying, well, it's about to tip any second, and we don't know. It's going to be held in surprise. But either way, Yahweh is my Elohim. And that's where the peace is. That's where the serenity, that's where the security is. Yahuwah Elohim. Zechariah 13:9. Though destruction comes to Jerusalem, 2/3 of the people are destroyed, 1/3 are brought into and through the fire and say, Yahuwah Elohi. That's the script. Yahuwah Elohi. Yod He Vav He, Aleph Lamed He Yod. Yahweh says, my people, 1/3 of the people in Jerusalem will say, Yahuwah Elohi. That's it, 2 words. And Yahweh will say, this is my people. I am their Elohim. This is my people. What does that mean? Well, it's not just the words, it's the heart. And he keeps talking about, then you'll know that I am Yahweh. Then you'll know. Then you'll know. How? It's in these words. We got to come back to these words. And the proof of it is in verses following. When I became sanctified through you before their eyes. Yahweh is saying, when you tell the truth about me, my people, my covenant, the relationship that we have, that's making his name his Shem Kadosh. Then I will cause it to happen. Okay, well, that's what we've been doing. That's why we're making such a big deal about all this. Learn the language, keep the Moedim, sit down on Shabbat. Why? Because that is the Shem HaGadol of Yahuwah. Then he says, verse 24, Ezekiel 36, I will take you from among the nations, gather you from the land. That's the very next event. As soon as we do this, he's going to take us from the land. So if the upshot of whatever happens in U.S. presidential governmental upheaval and the upheavals of the world, that Yahweh takes his people back to the land of Israel, okay, whatever that looks like. Gee, I've just built my house. I've just, established my business. So what? Yahweh's promise is to take his people back to the land of Israel. Okay, but the land of Israel, their government won't allow us. It doesn't matter. Yahweh's going to do it. The Canaanites didn't want the Israelites coming in either. Verse 25, I will bring you to your own soil. Then I will sprinkle pure water upon you that you may become cleansed. I will cleanse you from all your contamination and from all your idols. Verse 26, I will give you a new heart and put a new spirit within you. I will remove the heart of stone from your flesh and give you a heart of flesh. I will put my spirit within you. Gee, sounds pretty Christian. How wonderful. And I will make it so that you will follow my decrees and guard my ordinances and fulfill them. What? That's going back under the law. No way, man. What about his grace? His grace is that he will give us his ruach and we will walk in his ways, ordinances, and decrees. Gosh. And if you look at those words in Hebrew, it's the Torah. It's his chok. It's the constitution of the nation. It's the stuff that we've been telling the wrong story about. Because we're telling the story of Jesus Christ lifted up and crucified, and by his blood we don't have to do anything according to the Torah. That's the dirty lie of idolatry that he said was the desecration of his reputation in the understanding, the ayin of the goyim, amongst whom we've been scattered. But you don't get it unless you read these words in Hebrew. And once you see them, it's heartbreaking. You will dwell in the land. That's the word Shin Bet Tav. You will dwell, you will sit. That I gave to your forefathers, you will be a people to me, and I will be Elohim to you. He's going to step in and be the Shem HaGadol KaKadosh. He's going to live into all the fabled reputation that we've heard all the Bible stories about. I will save you from your contaminations. That means he's going to remove the effect of the idols, and he also puts into the category of abomination homosexuality and sorcery and eating things like pork and shellfish, which have a tendency to cause cancer, tumors, and various other things. They're all in the same category. He says, you guys have done a bunch of stuff, and your shepherds didn't even tell you the truth. So you have churches with these rainbow flags and churches telling people they can do this, that, and the other thing, not according to the Torah. Oh, yeah, we have nothing to do with that. We're good Christians. Oh, fine. Okay, you could be good Christians and do anything the hell you want. Chet lamed lamed. Because Jesus died on the cross, you can do all the chet lamed lamed you want. Pierced, perforated, drained out, start something new, go ahead. But it's not the Kadosh Shem of Yahuwah. It's an abomination according to being the house of Israel. So the choice is, do you want to be a good Christian or do you want to be the house of Israel? And that doesn't mean that you want to be a good Jew. It's the house of Yod Shin Resh Aleph Lamed. That's Yahweh's personal distinction. You will be my people and I will be Elohim to you. I will save you from all your contaminations. Verse 29, I will summon the grain and increase it, and I will not inflict famine upon you. Yahweh's going to call out his voice to the earth and cause it to sprout with water, with food, the fruit trees, with the animals. Yahweh is going to regrow the earth. And this is not when we're raptured up in heaven. This is the face of Haaretz, terra firma, this planet. I will increase the fruit of the tree, the produce of the field, so that you will no longer be subject to the shame of hunger among the nations. We have just lived 2,000 and 3,000 years of distorted shame, reproach. We were the bozos for all these years because our God didn't answer our prayers. Our God allowed them to torment and persecute and bring the Inquisition. Why? It's part of the curse, because of idolatry. Had the wrong God. Oops. Sorry, we thought it was the right one. Well, no shame, no blame, but here's the reality. Here's the truth. I'm not trying to blame the Christians or the Jews or the Muslims or anybody, but here's the truth of Yahuwah Elohi. Verse 31, then you will remember your evil ways and the deeds that were not good, and you will be disgusted with yourselves in your own sight because of your iniquities and because of your abominations. But my pastor and my priest and my professor told me it was good. It was an American. It was a Christian thing to do. It doesn't matter what they lied to you. 32, not for your sake do I act, Nam Adonai Yahweh. Let this be known to you. Be embarrassed and ashamed of your ways, O house of Israel. Okay, here it is, Ezekiel 36. And Yahweh is saying, when I finally allow you guys to realize the truth, don't blame each other. Be ashamed and embarrassed of your own ways. That's it. That's why I stopped going to church. I'm responding to Ezekiel 36, verse 32. That's why I stopped having a regard to the first day of the week, Sunday, and where I stopped having a regard for Christmas and Easter. Because according to these words, they are contemptible, idolatrous abominations. And even though somebody's worshiping Jesus in their heart, it doesn't change the fact that they're amalgamated blending of pagan, heathen, idolatrous reproach to the Shem Hagadol, Hakadosh of Yahweh. Okay, there we go. Verse 33, Ezekiel 36. Thus says Adonai Yahweh, on the day that I cleanse you from all your iniquities, I will cause the cities to be habited and the ruins will be built. No rapture, sorry. The desolated land will be tilled instead of having been desolate in the eyes of every passerby. People will say, this very land, which has been desolate, has become like the Garden of Eden. Has not happened yet. And the ruined, desolate, and demolished cities have been fortified and inhabited. Hasn't happened yet. The nations that remain around you will know. Here's the Aleph Tav. As I have said, so shall it be. Yahweh is projecting. Aleph. The nations around you will say, and then it's got to happen, or else the Tav isn't the Tav. The nations around you that remain will know that I, Yahweh, have rebuilt the ruins and I have replanted the wasteland. I, Yahweh, have spoken and I shall act. That's the meaning of Aleph Tav. I have spoken and I shall accomplish it. I have spoken and I shall act. That's the meaning of Yod He Vav He. He who causes it to exist. Yod He Wah He. He lives into his name because he speaks and he performs it. And for all of us to say, oh, yeah, we're just going to get out of here. Yeah, we're the renewed Israel. Yeah, Yahweh hates Israel and they're all going to burn in hell because they killed the Messiah and they don't recognize him. And we're the spiritual Israel. Not true. What has happened for these last couple thousand years has been the sustaining of the curse, proving that everything he said is true, because that was part of the history. And when you see that thing behind you, Kurt, written, there's the white section, then there's the black section with the white in the midst of it, then the white section again. That represents Aleph through Hay as being, you might say, like the eternal intent. And then the black zone is this present darkness of our cosmos. But inside this present darkness is the light of the truth. And then there's this, you might say, the eternal reality on the other side of this present darkness. And so for Yeshua to say the kingdom of heaven is within you, for Yeshua to be put in the tomb for 3 days and 3 nights is represented by that period between the letters Chet and Zadi. And that word spelled Chet Zadi is arrow, like bow and arrow, but it also means to partition. There's a partitioned section. So just the same way that the Mishkan was the place that was partitioned and separated from everything else, so Yahweh's kadoshness is partitioned and separated from everything else. Everything is a play on words. And there's something about what's in between those letters that's also, every one of those letters represents one of the Moedim, as listed in Leviticus 23. This is a very complex, compound, built-up system of understanding. But it's all in there, and it all fits, every single letter, according to that pattern. And when you realize this is what Yahweh said, and he's going to act accordingly, then for us to study these words is to know exactly what he's going to do. Get into chapter 37, gets into then about the dry bones that we talked about before. And if you say, Son of Man, verse 11, these bones are the whole house of Israel. Again, that's the unified 12 tribes. They are saying our bones are dried out. Our hope is lost. We are doomed. Therefore, prophesy to them. Remember, this chapter 37 comes after 36:23. 36:23 is the fulcrum tipping point for everything getting good, which was before Yahweh telling everybody what stupid things they were doing, what bozos they've been, and how everything brought destruction and everything being bad and dried up. So if we are at this tipping point, then what we have to have hope within us, because Yahweh is our Elohim, is that it doesn't matter what the voices are saying on the internet and in the governments around the world. It doesn't matter. It's Goliath shouting with his last breath. We have Yahuwah, our Elohim, who hold up his hand, both hands. I am Yahweh, your Elohim. Nam Yahweh. Okay, that's it. That's all. We don't no need of anything else other than to know what these words mean. I will bring you, verse 12, Ezekiel 37. Therefore prophesy and say. That means give the aleph and it has to tav. Thus says Adonai Yahweh, behold, I am opening your graves, raising you up from your graves, and my people, and I will bring you to the soil of Israel. Then you will know that I am Yahweh when I open your graves, when I rise you up from your graves, my people, and when I put my spirit into you and you come to life, I will set you on your soil. Then you'll know that I, Yahweh, have spoken and I have fulfilled. Aleph Tav once again. Nam Yahweh. Go down, for you, son of man, take for yourself a piece of wood, write on it for Judah and the children of Israel, his comrades, another piece of wood for Joseph, the wood of Ephraim and the house of Israel, his comrades, the two houses coming back together, the confederated 12 tribes. Hasn't happened yet. Going down, verse 21, I will gather them from all around. That's the word saviv. We'll get to that in a few minutes, and bring them to their soil. They will no longer be two nations. They will no longer be divided into two kingdoms ever again. Again, there's a duration of a great amount of time in front of us ever again. It's ancient history. We're living at the tipping point of a future huge extent of time. This might be 1,000 years in front of us. Remember, the model is 7 days in a week. 6 days, he said, was given unto man, but 1 day. Keeping the Sabbath day is a constant reminder. And if we say, look, there's 1,000 days like a year like 1,000 days, okay. So he gives man to be stupid bozos for 6,000 years. And he says, listen, I've reserved for my people the 7th millennium. Adam lived to be close to 1,000 years old. Before the flood, they lived about 1,000 years. He could turn it around and say, okay, you guys are going to live for 1,000 years. He could be that. I don't know. I'm just saying. But he has to cleanse us. He says, when I cleanse you, does he make us like the Garden of Eden? Well, if he makes everything like the Garden of Eden, is that going to restore the physics He's going to restore the ruined electromagnetic fields and the chemical, the nitrogen, the oxygen, the ozone, it's like maybe he's going to speak to the food and cause it to grow, which is the opposite of Monsanto and Billy Gates and his boys distorting and perverting the DNA of all the food. When Yahweh changes it and it nourishes it, everything could be different. He's going to cleanse the abomination. That's not the Messiah coming and dying on the cross. That was a different event causing a different sort of cleansing, and I'm not diminishing it. But what Yahweh is saying puts everything back, like the Sabbath day being a recalibration of what it was in the very beginning. And it's not the message taught by the church. Sorry, we've had our shepherds consuming us and lying to us. We can't go back and validate with the mouth of the liar to find out whether these words are true. You've got 22 letters behind you on that screen. Now we got to figure out what they mean. Fortunately, they're correlated, keyed to the Moedim. So if we don't know the Moedim, the festivals of Yahweh in Leviticus 23, that's the secret code by which everything's been thrown out and askewed and distorted. Because the Christian church did away with the Moedim. That was Yahweh's way of saying, okay, the code is scrambled and you guys will never find the truth until you come back to these Moedim, which are the Shabbats. When you return to these Shabbats, there it is. It's like, what a simple little code. Come back to the Shabbats of Leviticus 23, the 7 Moedim, and there it all is. Fit to the alphabet. How beautiful, how simple. Okay, so let's go down. We're still in Ezekiel 37, driving on to Ezekiel 43. Verse 23, they will no longer be contaminated with their idols. So something's got to happen where all of a sudden we say, get rid of the idols. Well, they weren't doing the idols necessarily because they were following idols. They were doing idols. Remember what Aaron said with the golden calf. This is Yahweh. This is your Elohim who brought you out of the land of Egypt. No, it's not. We were lied to by our leaders doing perverse idolatry, thinking that if we had a picture of Caesar Borgia up on the wall, Leonardo da Vinci's gay lover, that everything would go well for us. I'm sorry, it's not true. All right. They will not be contaminated with their idols and their abhorrent things with all their sins. I will save them from their dwelling places where they had sinned, and I will purify them. Something has to go back to the beginning. They will be a nation to me, and I will be Elohim to them. Hasn't happened yet. This is in front of us. It could be right at the doorway right now. My servant David will be king over them. Is that Yeshua, or is that the guy that lived 3,000 years ago? Or is it Yahweh's beloved servant? What does that mean? It's like King Memlamed Kaf. Well, that is actually walking the way we're supposed to. So I could retranslate this and say it's not saying necessarily my servant David will be king, but he said they will walk according to being my beloved as my worshipful servants. Well, where's the king? We don't necessarily need a king if we're walking in his ways, because the word king can be translated walking in the ways he had told us to. Mem Lamed Kaf. Anyway, there will be one shepherd. I'm not saying David's not the king, but I'm just saying there's different ways to read things. They will follow my ordinances and keep my decrees and fill them. Right there, they're not Christians. Why? Because the Christians teach that it's all about the blood, it's all under grace, and we don't have to even think about, worry about, or try to walk in his ways. And he says they will follow, walking on purpose my ordinances. And that's the word het kuf, translated law, statute, commandment, and do them. I will seal a covenant with peace, verse 26. Eternal covenant with them, emplace them and increase them, and place my sanctuary among them forever. It's going to go on for quite some time. My dwelling place will be among them. I will be Elohim to them. They will be a people to me. Then the nations will know. The nations are still here that are not his people. He hasn't done away with them. He hasn't thrown them into hell. He hasn't taken us up into heaven. That I am Yahuwah who sanctifies, that makes kadosh, who purifies and makes Israel kadosh. So in Daniel, I think it's Daniel 7, talking about that fourth beast who chews up or tries to lie to the Kadoshim Elyonin. That's the saints, the holy ones. Well, that's the Kadoshim Elyonin are the ones who are sanctified as being Yahweh's own people. Israel, who sanctifies Israel, when my sanctuary will be among them forever. Well, what's his sanctuary? It's called the Mikdash. Well, that's Mem Kuf Dalet Shin. That's the idea of, like the picture behind you, that white area in the midst of the dark area is the truth of what those letters mean in our midst, from within us. Well, when you appropriate the meaning of these words and letters, that becomes the reality. Chapter 38. I'm going to go kind of quickly here. Concerning Gog, that's the word prince of Meshach and Tubal, where the word prince is Rosh. So some people think Gog might be Russia, which means head. You will be repaid, verse 8, you'll be repaid, that's pei kuf dalet, that's the word fakad, PQD or PHQD, which means held accountable, like the man who went away, the wealthy man, and he comes back and says, what did you do with the talents I gave you? How have you invested the seed that I gave you, the money that I gave you, the opportunity that I gave you? And all of us will be held accountable for what we did with what Yahweh entrusted us with. That's the word fakad. And be punished or rewarded according to what we did with this information. You will be repaid fakad for your sins of ancient times. See, even though something was a generation or two in the past, it's not over. The blood that Americans have spilt on North America with the Native Americans and the blacks and the Mexicans and whoever, it's like, oh, that voice is still crying out from the ground. This nation of United States of America has done detestable, horrible things, which it might have to pay for here. In the end times, you will come to a land restored from the sword. Is that Israel? Is that North America? Who knows? Gathered from many nations upon the mountains of Israel that had laid desolate continuously. You who have been brought out from nations, all of them dwelling in security, will attack like a storm. Okay, so here in Ezekiel 38 follows 37. So what we have is setting up a little story, a narrative, a sephering, is that the scattered of Israel turn back to Yahuwah in their hearts, his Kadosh Shem. And then he regathers them, brings them to the land of Israel, where they dwell securely for a period of time, quite some time, absolutely in security, with the land like the Garden of Eden. And then Yahuwah is going to stir up in Gog, perhaps up near Russia to the north. You will conceive a wicked design, ideas arise in your heart. That's the devil. No, Yahweh himself is going to stick those ideas in the heart of Gog upon a people gathered from the nations who dwell upon the navel of the earth. The word navel is where you get the word Tiberius, Tet Bet Vav Resh, Tabor. So somehow Yahweh says, I'm going to bring all my people to the land of Israel, and they're going to dwell in safety. And then Yahuwah is going to stir up with an evil thought in the mind of this people named Gog, G-O-G, Gimel Vav Gimel, to the north, and they're going to say, I'm going to come and just take those people out. 38:16, you will advance against my people Israel like a cloud covering the earth. There's going to be a swarm of so many they can't even be numbered, and nobody can stop them. You'll see some Hollywood movies where a few guys are standing there, and this horde of millions, computer-generated armies, and it's like, what the heck? It's like, how can anybody? Well, that's the picture. That's right. I will bring you upon my land in order that the nations may know me. Well, here again, Yahweh's saying, look, I don't expect my people to stand and fight against these guys, but Yahuwah himself, our Elohim, is saying, look, the nations refuse to understand who I am, so I'm going to display my identity the same way he did with Egypt and Pharaoh, where he did the 10 plagues and then threw them into the split Red Sea, Sea of Reeds, Yom Suf, and said, okay, do you guys get it yet? Do you get it yet? Well, even the people of Israel don't get it at this point. We who are reading this language and saying, this is Yahweh, this is my Elohim. Yeah, just like he said. That's where we stand. So it doesn't matter what these voices are that are going on around us. Verse 17, this is a very interesting phrase. He says, Hey, Aleph Tav, Hey, Vav, Aleph. It's translated, are you the one? Now think about this. Yahweh knows who's what. He's got the world predestined, right? According to some. He's now looking at Gog and saying, hey, listen, long ago, I spoke out of my prophets of Israel, and I prophesied, I foretold that there would be a generation coming when I would stir them up and they would think to attack my people who are dwelling in security. Are you that generation? Are you that nation that's now going to fulfill it? It's almost like he's saying, you can choose to be the generation and the nation that I prophesied if you want. And if the people of Gog at that time said, whoa, no way, man, I'm not going there. Absolutely not. I read the story. I'm not going to be that idiot. I'm not going to come against those people where Yahweh is their Elohim. I ain't going there. Okay, we'll wait for another generation. So too, we could say Yahweh is saying to us right now, I told you that after the curse was up, I would allow my words to be known to my people, and they could choose to turn to me. And Shabbat, return to dwell with all these words that I have commanded. Are you going to choose to be that generation? Absolutely. Sign me up. Hodula Yuaki Tov, Hileolam Chazdo. His mercy endures forever, including today. It's not done away with. It's not passé. It's not something that was nailed to the cross and done away with. It's resurrected in us because Yeshua is the prototype fractal pattern model proving that it's absolutely true. So, okay, are you the one whom I spoke in earlier days through my servants, the prophets of Israel, who prophesied in years ago that I would bring you against them? Yahweh's saying, do you choose to play into the script? Yeah, let's do it on this side. Okay, verse 20, there's going to be a great earthquake, so huge in the land is centered in Israel that every wall topples. Think about this. He's got his people living in the land across the face of the earth. Every city, every nation, every people, every animal, every bird knocked out of the tree. He's going to make an earthquake so big that the entire earth is impacted and everything falls down to nothing. Manic panic. Every man's sword then turned against his brother. Hasn't happened yet. Something like the walls of Jericho on the face of the entire earth. Then verse 23. Va ha tagalti, ve ha takadoshti, ve nudati, la ayani goyim ravim, ve yadau ki ani Yahweh. The upshot of it all is ki ani Yahweh. I am, with his hand raised. I am Yahweh. And those words being translated, the majestic, exalted, gadol honor, and the kadoshness. I will put myself, nudati, I will put myself on display to be known in the comprehension, the eyes of the nations. And that word goyim also remember means to navigate it, the phonetic spelling of words. It's all based on the meaning of these 22 letters of the Hebrew Semitic alphabet. Ravim, the great, the multiple, and everybody's going to know. Thousands of people, they'll all know. It's in these letters. We are reading these letters. Like I said, this is like basically the Rosetta Stone. This is the secret formula. This is what every great mind, whether it was Isaac Newton or Einstein or any astrophysicist that you want to, the smartest minds that the world, Galileo or whoever, search the heavens, search the depths. The meaning of these 22 letters. I had mentioned once before that the Norse Vikings, their chief god named Odin, he said, don't even let the name of the deities be in your mouth. But let me just say this. He had this is according to some legend I heard, he had himself suspended on some tree between heaven and earth, tortured for days in order to learn the meaning of the runes. Okay, that's a picture of the symbolized Yeshua being raised up, and he was trying to learn the meaning of the letters, the runes, the letters of the Nordic language. And it's like, their chief deity doesn't even know what these letters mean? It is a picture of Yeshua being lifted up, crucified, and entombed for 3 days and 3 nights, coming back to life, because it's the covenant relationship between Yahweh and Israel. That's what these letters mean. And even the Norse Viking champion deity had no clue. Just shows you who we're dealing with. And Yahweh says, I'm he that causes it to exist. Cause what to exist? Every one of the meaning of these 22 letters. Okay, let's move on. 39:2. I'm against you, Gog. I will lead you astray and seduce you. Here's an interesting phrase. He says, Ki ani debarti, nam Adonai Yahweh. Ki ani Yahweh is normally what he says, but here he says, Ki ani debarti. I have spoken, or I am as I spoke. As I have spoken. Here he's putting himself equal, just like John 1. He's the guy that spoke, and he's not saying, I am the guy that spoke, or I will do what I spoke. He's saying, I am as I have spoken. In other words, he's saying whatever he says, we should take it as his personal identity. Interestingly enough, that word Dabarti, Dalet Bet Resh Tav Yod, is used in, I think it's Psalms 102, verse 5, where it says, the order of Melchizedek. That word Dabarti is translated as order, like it was some secret Masonic rite of the Illuminati. It literally means, I gave you words of stipulation and command. It's the words describing the nature and the balance of the relationship between Yahuwah and Israel. That's what the word Dabarti means. I spoke it, I am it, it is, and that's the way we are bound and knotted and tied, yoked together, Israel and Yahuwah. That's what the word Dabarti means. I said it, I spoken, and that's where I stand. That's where I'm at. That's me. I am according to these words. And yet it's twisted into the order of Melchizedek as if it was some sort of secret rite of the Knights Templar or the Illuminati or whoever they call themselves these days. Verse 7, Ve'at Shem Kadosh. That means the Kadosh name I will make known. Aleph Vav Dalet Yod Ayin. Well, Aleph Vav Dalet Yod, Odi, is where you get the word audio, or I will proclaim to make known in the midst, Betok, Ami, my people Israel. Velo achal et Shem Kadoshi. That word Aleph Ket Lamed, he's saying, and I will no longer profane my own reputation. I will no longer allow or cause of my own actions for my name to be disturbed, made vile, made of ill repute, made of wrong desecration ever again. So he's admitting that he himself has caused and allowed his own name, fame, reputation to be distorted, perverted, punched holes in, drained out, just like an image, the picture of Yeshua being crucified. That's what Yahweh has allowed to happen to his own identity. I believe that at least by 2010, that was time for Ezekiel 36:23. Okay, here we are. We fulfilled the prison sentence, the time of the curse. Okay, now we're on the other side. So let's make his great name Kadosh. How do you make his great Shem Kadosh? By extolling Yahuwah Elohi. He said, swear by my name as Yahweh lives. Yahuwah Chai. Yodevav He Chet Yod. He says, I will make the Goyim know that Ki Ani Yahweh, Kadosh Be'Israel. He's made Kadosh by and through and of Israel. And if you don't want to be Israel, you can make up all the stupid laws you want for yourself. It just doesn't matter. Then at chapter 39, verse 9, he goes on and he talks about that he's going to bring all these armies against Israel, and there'll be 7 years burning the weapons. Nobody's even going to cut trees and sell cordwood. They're going to be burning the military weapons. Well, what about the guns made out of metal? They won't be carrying guns and cannons. They'll be wood. And he's going to feed the birds, 39:17, Ezekiel 39:17, feed the birds. Well, that sounds just like in, Revelation chapter 20, I think it is, where he's going to call all these people in and it's called the marriage supper of the Lamb. Oh, the marriage supper of the Lamb. You see this big banquet table in photographs that people have done, but it's actually Yahweh feeding the birds the carcasses of great men and millions of soldiers and horses. It doesn't even sound like modern warfare. What the heck is going on? I don't know. 39:21, he says, I will manifest my glory. Chapter 39, verse 22, the house of Israel will know. Now we're starting to get close to the good stuff. But I'll go verse 21 of Ezekiel 39. Weighty glory through or among the Goyim on exhibition, every single one of them bringing mishpat, validate that I am doing my hand whom I have killed or I've put to death among them. So Yahweh's saying, listen, you either take me for my identity, or you'll see that when I start killing everybody, that I'm the guy that's doing it. It's like, oh, okay. So, people think that, oh, well, the Allah, the God of Islam, is this raging tiger. Well, Yahweh is such a fierce warrior, man of war, as it's called one other place, that he'll make that fierce tiger look like a little pussycat. I mean, Yahweh is this raging beast. Verse 22, Yada bet Israel, the house of Israel know, Kiani Yahweh Elohim, beyond the day, birthed out of the day, the same day, and days beyond, and other days. So Yahweh's saying, then the whole house of Israel, like if we're not convinced yet, we'll be convinced then, but we better be sure we're on the right page now, because right now, before everything hits the fan, we've got a moment left. That's why I was saying, maybe you shouldn't edit this. Maybe you should just go ahead and throw it up on the internet so people, if the internet does shut down, it'll give them one day to watch stuff. Who knows? And knowing the Goyim, because of iniquity, the exile happened to the house of Israel, yoked to being away from being with me. That's yoked to being mem, ayin, lamed, vav. So because everything in world history has happened for one reason, Israel's idolatry. Israel having the wrong identity of who is Yahuwah, their Elohim. So for us to say in these letters, in these Moedim, is the accurate identity of Yahweh, our Elohim, the Elohim of Israel. That's the very reason why all this stuff has happened. So the whole idea of going back to that language, those letters, those Moedim, and say, here in these words is the true Kadosh Shem of Yahuwah, the actual identity. And the misrepresentation of his identity is the reason for all the world history that's happened, and including the climactic crux of the things that are about to happen in front of us even now. And Yahweh says that he is hidden away. That word is Aleph Samik Tav Resh. I have hidden my face away from them. And I will, Aleph Tav Nun Mem, I will provide the tonic by my hand of affliction, and the Yod Pe Lamed Vav, which means to fall, or the mystery, the hidden, that's the word for the root of the word for paleo, sword will put to shame, or like, so in other words, everybody that has a reproach for the truth of Yahweh will fall by the sword and be put to failure, but those who trust in Yahweh will be saved from that failure, I believe is what this is saying. Verse 23, here it is, Ezekiel 39:24. Like the abominations, and this is the word Pei Shin Ayin, the word we talked about last week that's pronounced Pashah. It's the word that means trespass, revolt, rebel, folly, criminal act, stepped over the line too far. It also means to search, examine, or investigate, like one searching for bed bugs. It's like, you think this is Pashah? You think that this searching this language is folly? Pish-tosh? Okay, you'll see. You're going to every bit of your rebellion is counter to this. So for the church to say, he said the seventh day, we're going to make it the first. Stepped over the line. For Yahweh to say, I give you my 7 Moedim, and the church to say, hell with that. We're gonna do Christmas and Easter, Halloween. All right. Not only did you step over the line, you set up camp in the midst of idolatry and contamination. And you think you're not going to get leprosy? You think you're not going to get cancer and heart disease? It's a manifest of exactly what you've been doing. How do we get out of that camp? Turn back to the Shabbat and Moedim. Do everything hidden my face from them. Because of everything they have done, Yahweh says, I have hidden my face from them. So for us to say, well, it says that Yahweh's going to hide his face from his people. And as we said last week, if Yahweh hid his face, how can we possibly find him? It's like, well, he's the ultimate hide and go seek. He can hide where nobody can ever find him. But he's hidden himself in his words, in his commands, in his Sabbath day. As Mark was saying in the beginning, he said, I'm going to meet you on Shabbat. Well, we're going to keep Shabbat. We're going to make up a new holy day, call it Sunday, and let's tell everybody that he meets with us in church. It's a lie. Not true. It's just not true. It's not what he said. You changed it. You distorted it. You perverted it. Different DNA. Sorry, wrong God. All right. Well, that's Ezekiel 39:24, verse 25. Verily of a truth, so says Adonai Yahweh. Right now, I will return the captivity. And that word captivity is Shin Bet Yod Tav, Shabbat. Why? Because when we return to Shabbat, it's the proof that we're listening. He held that out as the token. Remember, he said, this is the seal. This is the signet. This is the evidence. I'm giving you Shabbat, and then I'm taking it away, so that when you want to return, you return to Shabbat. That's the sign. That's the sign that I'm your Elohim and you're my people. To Jacob and Racham, rachamti, and I will pour out warm compassion. The word is also womb. It's reshet mem, like that a mother has a womb where she's nurturing her baby. And here in the United States, the Christian, culture of aborting millions and millions of babies, that's the opposite of rachem. So everything in our culture, even though we claim to be God's holy nation, what a bunch of lies. We're hypocrites. We're lying, stealers, and killers. It's like that's what the house of Ephraim has done. But here it says the entire house of Israel will make known or will realize that I am zealous, jealous, fanatical to own my nest, which is the place of my Shem Kadosh. In other words, Yahweh's saying, I built my reputation, I designed my reputation to be what these words, these Moedim, this Sabbath day, this Messiah is all about. And the people that lie about it are foreign, alien abominations of bad shepherds who are feeding themselves, have nothing to do with them, come back to these words. And for Yahweh to give us these words at this time is everything. Verse 26, pick up and carry all the shame and reproach, all the excellent, prominent, distinguished that, and then here's this word where we get the word malady, mem ayin lamed, unfaithful, treachery, betray, the high place, with a garment, with returning to Shabbat upon their land and dwell security without horrid fright, terror. I'm just reading the words real fast here. What I'm saying is that I'm just giving you the meanings of word by word. That's Ezekiel 39:26. We have to basically realize that our distinguished, prominent, excellent people have lied to us and given us ways to be unfaithful, treachery, betrayal, even at the high place, staged as being a theater of dignity and temple worship, but it's what has brought on the malady of the destruction of our entire culture and people and humanity on Adam. But if we go to him, that it will be a place where without horror, fright, or terror, and yet the voices that are upon us today, January 17th, is one where the voices of the media are trying to stir up around the world horror, fright, and terror, which is proof that we haven't come to this other side yet. And then verse 27, Yahweh is returning to be with him out of or beyond the peoples and kibbutz with them from the lands of their enemies. Again, he's saying he's going to bring us back. Then here's Nun Kuf Dalet Shin Tav Yod. Nun is like this lightning bolt of making it happen. Kadosh. I will make the Kadosh be with them in the eyes of the Goyim Ravim. So Yahweh is going to put his grandeur of being our Elohim with us, amongst us, and saving us and helping us so that the eyes of the nations will realize it's not us, it's not Israel, it's not the Jews, it's not the Christians, it's Yahuwah, the Elohim of Israel. He's going to gain reputation for his name. Verse 28, they will know ki ani Yahweh. Once again, I am Yahweh. Their Elohim, when I am discovered, or when I turn around, when I turn the revolving door, that's the word Gimel Lamed, Hagalut, with them toward the nations, like, and here's the word Nun Samik, like that Nun Samik, it means to lift up, it's a miracle, it's Yeshua being lifted up, it's Moshe lifting up the serpent on the stick, it means flag, signal, miracle, like the miracle of the Exodus, when I take them out towards their land, and never I will make them ever again led astray or led out of the land. Yahweh said, okay, I kicked him out, I brought him back, and never again. He's telling world history, it's never going to happen again. It's never going to happen again to the end of the earth that they ever get kicked out of their land. But we have to be taken back to their land. Anybody who says this is the end of the world, we have the rapture in front of us, and that we're the spiritual Israel and he did away, it's just not true. He will bring his people back to the land of Israel. That's what his words say. Period. It hasn't happened yet. This has to be in front of us. And never, verse 29, never I will Samik Tav Yod Resh. The word Satar, very similar to Samik Tav Resh. Look it up in the dictionary. It means hide and conceal. You told to Daniel, hide the word, seal the book. Put a signet, put a stopper on it that can't, like the sword in the stone, Excalibur, that can't be taken out. Never again will I hide, contradict, neutralize, or dishevel my face from them and scatter them. The idea here is Shin Pei Kaf means pour out, spill, scatter, discharge my ruach yoke to the house of Israel. Then he, again, the signet stamp, Nam Adonai Yahweh. He says, look, it's never going to happen again, where I'm going to scatter them across it. I'm going to take my spirit and just rip it away from them and fragment it. This is a picture of a reality. Regardless of what Goliath said, this is the reality. Regardless of what we hear the news media saying or our politicians or preachers, Yahweh says again and again, word after word after word or word, this is the reality and wants us to get it. Okay, here. Now we're going to Ezekiel 43.